We're going to begin this session by looking at why CorelDRAW versus other graphic software and how that relates to the equipment and fundamentally to the artwork that's being used. We're going to start by looking at pixel artwork and defining pixel artwork and how that relates to the other kind of artwork, which is line art. But as we look at this picture, just to begin, we see that pixel artwork is made up of dots or pixels. These dots and pixels are aligned in such a way that it makes up an image that maybe looks like a letter, but it's really just a bunch of dots that look like a letter and not really a letter in and of itself that can be edited easily. Line art, on the other hand, is made up with nodes, curves, and lines. And these are edited much more easily with other tools with CorelDRAW, and we can shape those lines much easier typically than working with a bunch of dots. So you always want to use the right kind of artwork for what you're using in your project. Now let's look at how you might obtain some pixel artwork. Pixel artwork, I've come up with a short list of how do you come up with pixel artwork. Well, you can take a page out of a magazine or a newspaper and you can put that artwork in a flatbed scanner, make a scan, and then you can import that digital scanned image into a computer. That would be a version of pixel artwork. Or taking a picture with your smartphone. Many of our new phones these days take wonderful, excellent, high-resolution quality pictures that can be used for laser engraving. And additionally, in your pixel artwork software, which we'll look at, you can draw images straight from scratch. So either from scratch, taking a picture with a phone, or putting some artwork in a flatbed scanner. The example here that I have is a picture of a knife blade, an open knife, and we see that that knife it's not really a line art image of a knife, it's a bunch of pixels or dots that look like a knife. And so we're going to recommend that as you put images from a magazine or news article into a scanner, that you scan it no more or no less than 300 dpi or dots per inch. There are also certain file format extensions that relate to pixel artwork. You'll notice that each of the little squares in our letter A there. Each square is represented by 1 bit. And many of you remember where we used to have to count because of memory's sake, bits and bytes and how those add up to a certain memory usage or limitation. But nowadays our big hard drives can take up numerous and hundreds of gigabyte and terabyte drives. But it's important to note that pixel artwork is made up of these bits, and each square represents a bit, and that grid that you see, that grid of the pixels, is the map, and that's where Windows comes up with the term bitmap. So I hope you'll see that pixel artwork is identified in Windows at the computer by a bitmap extension. There's also an extension called JPEG or JPG, JPEG. There is GIF, GIF, TIFF, PNG, Portable Network Graphics file, and PS file. These types of images are all identified as pixel artwork. Yes, they're different extensions, possibly made by different companies, but they are still defined as pixel artwork. Now we mentioned that you don't want to scan a logo any more or no less than 300 dpi at the size it plans to be engraved. So images of icon size, maybe from a web link. If you were to download an image, we see that this logo on the screen is quite pixelated. So notice in our status bar in CorelDRAW we have a 27 by 27 dpi. So that image would not engrave well at all. And so we want to make sure that we're engraving or have an image that is no more or no less than 300 dpi at the size it plans to be engraved. 72 or 96 or 186 just doesn't provide enough detail. It's important to note that there are many software packages out there that support pixel artwork and give you many powerful tools on how to create and edit and manipulate these graphic images. One of those would be Corel Photo Paint. that is included with the CorelDRAW graphic suite, and we'll cover that in a moment. But Corel Photo Paint, Adobe has a software package to edit pixel artwork, and it's called Photoshop. Adobe Photoshop. There is MS Paint and Print Shop and many more. But all of these programs are designed and give you the tools to create and edit, manipulate pixel artwork primarily. Next, we're taking a look at line art. We mentioned that line art is created by nodes and shapes and mathematical equations of lines and curves. We see that line art typically will have a much cleaner area or much cleaner edge around certain spots of artwork than pixel images. Line art artwork in CorelDRAW and other programs are defined by lines and curves and nodes. File format extensions that work with line art are identified. They identify line art as EPS, more of the most popular line art format, EPS, encapsulated PostScript file, PLT, a plotter file, AI, an Adobe Illustrator file, CDR, CorelDRAW file, DXF and DWG primarily relate to AutoCAD, but other CAD programs as well. There's SolidWorks and many others. SVG, which is a scalable vector graphics file, and WMF, Windows Meta file. So these are pictures and examples of lines that are really skinny. We see that you can also have lines that are made up of thicker lines, and also lines that are different colors and different nodes within those lines. And so these all can be edited in many different ways with line art tools. Now you'll find these tools within programs that are built for line art. Among the top two in our industry would be CorelDRAW and Adobe Illustrator. But we also mentioned you can import other file formats into Illustrator or CorelDRAW, such as AutoCAD or SolidWorks. Line art artwork is used primarily for machines such as CNC routers, vinyl cutting equipment where it uses a knife blade to cut out vinyl. If we take a look at some of these pictures like embroidery machines, plasma cutters, metal laser cutters, mechanical engravers, trophy and award, diamond tip scratch engraving machines, and laser cutting. Each of these images we can take a closer look at. And this shows an actual tool that is cutting or slicing through a particular material. Now these tools primarily work with lines, and it's really not applicable or practical to send a plasma cutter or a CNC router a bitmap JPEG picture. So you always want to use the right tool for the job. I'm also in zoom mode here. You can see my zoom tool. I'm going to push the space bar, and that takes me back to my pick tool. Then I'm going to push the letter N, which means navigate. And the navigator lets me pan a certain area. So I've created this webinar or template in CorelDRAW, and I'm just moving from page to page. But as I mentioned, line art artwork is used for cutting metal, plasma cutters. You can use laser cutters that slice through metal like it's paper. Embroidery machines, seal and tools, using router bits, using collets, using vinyl cutters that are using a knife blade to slice through vinyl, and those that get applied to windows and decals. Using a laser cutter, and how that would apply to using a laser to cut out plastic or wood templates. AutoCAD for building and plotter machines. And then using a laser to cut and slice through wood for making projects that join together to make models and kits. So there are many different uses for line art programs and line art graphics. If we look at other pixel artwork, we'll see that pixel artwork can be used for things like screen printing, UV LED printing, sublimation, photo printing, and direct-to-garment printing. So this would be able to basically print a full-color image onto many different substrates, t-shirts and many other sublimatable materials, and canvas and screen printing and signage. Let's take a look at some of these questions we have on artwork. One of the common questions we get is, what artwork is best to use? And what file format do I ask for my customer? I'm going to zoom up on some of these and let's look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of using raster-based images. Now, we're going to use the term raster here and how it relates to the artwork. And it's important not to get that confused with the laser output. And we'll look at that in detail later. But for this example or explanation, bitmap means pixel images. So pixel bitmap images are made with pixels that represent a photograph or photo elements. And they do a much better job of using halftones and grayscales to come up with a real-life image. The use of different colors and pixels allows for smooth blending. For example, the sails of a ship or a sunset. Very easily done with pixels and different colors, not so easily done in line art. There are quite a few disadvantages to pixel artwork, and you're basically limited to the number of pixels within the image. And most of you have probably found out one time or another that it's not easily done by scaling up a bitmap or JPEG without losing quality. You really can't go bigger. And I know there's some exceptions to that in other software, but by and large, the practical aspect of a bitmap is to always scan or create that output at the size it plans to be engraved. If you try and stretch that up outward and bigger, you'll lose a lot of quality. And so you're limited to the size you can engrave some of these low-resolution pixel images. If we take a closer look at vector line art, an explanation there, vector line art are, as we mentioned, mathematical calculations that form objects and lines. The beautiful thing about vector or line art, I should say, is line art can be scaled up to size without losing any quality. It can be laser cut or vinyl cut or CNC'd at any size or resolution, and you just don't lose any quality of the output. Vector artwork is required many times so that you get the cleanest possible output. The disadvantage is probably some of you have seen that if you request vector artwork from your customer, it's really not a common output type that they're going to know about. So, but it is, if you can get some vector line art, it is really the best to use for most either printing or cutting. But again, we'll back up and say if you're printing grayscale or halftone images, then that's better to use with a pixel. So it really depends on the project, but our answer to the question, what file format do you request, our answer would be request as many file formats from that customer as possible. If they have 6 different extensions for one particular file, ask them to send you all of those, all 6. There might be one of those that will be a vector line art that you didn't anticipate. But we did give you the extensions to look for, and if you can have them search for those extensions that relate to line art, that might be best to use. If it's a cutting application, however, if it's for a high-end print, then you may want to stick with the BMP or the TIFF image. But again, you want to use at least 300 DPI for the pixel images at the size they plan to be engraved. Again, we have pixel artwork versus line art. These are the 2 different kinds of artwork in the whole world, and you're either using pixels or lines. And this is reviewing the file extensions for those and the graphic software that's used for each kind of extension. I guess I should say that there are limiting utility things we can do to bitmap pixel images in a line art program. For example, CorelDRAW or Illustrator. You can import pixel artwork into those programs, but really to do the heavy lifting of, say, knocking the background out of a photograph, you want to stick with using Adobe Photoshop or Corel Photo Paint or a paint program. If you're going to do some heavy-duty cutting or manipulating of nodes for a cutting application, you want to stay with CorelDRAW or Illustrator. So use the right tool for the job. So why is the CorelDRAW software most commonly used for the laser engraving industry? We get that question quite often. But as we discussed in previous slides, CorelDRAW is a vector or line art based, to be specific, a line art based program that allows the operator to import and manipulate many different file types, including pixel images as well as line art. My experience is that the learning curve for CorelDRAW is much smaller than higher-end graphic software packages such as AutoCAD or Illustrator or other 3D programs. CorelDRAW is typically much cheaper as well, less expensive, and you'll probably find CorelDRAW either online faster as a download or at a local office supply store. If you're just in a pinch to get a software package that you can use, then you could actually find CorelDRAW at a local office supply store probably more than any other package.